and hand if you see them on the street like that? Let's be honest.
I leave them alone.
You leave them alone. Okay, so you're being honest. So you're keeping it real. Okay. All right. All right. In this, it's 1 in 4 are affected by mental illness. So 1 out of 4 adults are affected by mental illness. 8.6. I know you can't see it up here, though. You got it? Okay. 8.6 million adults have suicidal thoughts. 1 in 30 experience PTSD, and suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States. So I'm going to go back over that. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause in the United States. Now I have my picture. Lovely lady. I call her Diane. So, in that I'm not crazy. And this is how they feel. Coming from a mental health perspective, they haven't said they've been crazy. They've been in mechanical restraints. And we have to be really careful about the language that we use when we're dealing with this specific population. A lot of times you don't know how offensive you can be by labeling someone, saying that they're crazy. That's not the issue. Because a lot of these individuals can have prominent jobs just like you and I. There's no differential difference to put them in a category, correct? And then here with the gun. This has happened when you have a manic episode. And we're going to get to that further on in the presentation. Okay? So what is mental illness? So I'm going to put my 9 slides up. But in the short run, what is mental illness? What is it?
Chemical imbalance.
Chemical imbalance. Okay. Anything else you can think of? That's pretty good too as well. So it is. Yes.
It's how you feel.
Family history.
Family history. Absolutely.
It's how you feel too.
How you feel. So it controls kind of your thoughts, your feelings, and behaviors. Is that pretty much how it works? Yes.
I guess you would say situational.
Situational. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is mental illness? Mental illness refers to a wide range of mental health disorders that affects one's mood, thinking, and behavior. And that came from my Mayo Clinic 2013. Mental health disorders include the following, but not solely limited to schizophrenia, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar, and major depression. And it's a lot of others too as well. But just to give you a brief example of what they are. If mental illness is not treated, symptoms can lead to severe emotional, behavioral, and physical problems. The severity of mental illness can impair individuals' ability to function in daily life. And I'm talking about interpersonal relations, occupational, and social. Some of the signs and symptoms, and this is an overall perspective. We have mood swings, highs and lows. Sometimes these persons may be social withdrawn from family and close friends. The appetite changes. Either they eat more or eat less. Excessive worrying, fearful. Their weight changes. Inability to cope with daily stress, paranoia. In this, of course, we hit it, suicidal ideations is common. Detachment from reality. And what I mean by this, auditory and visual hallucination. So these are the individuals that may hear things. They may act on commands. Feeling sad or down. Now, I'm not talking about you had a bad game and you feel kind of bad. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about prolonged sadness, prolonged feeling down, which is symptomology of depression. You're confused. You have an inability to concentrate. Some of these individuals can be hostile or angry. They can be irritable, of course. And then sometimes, if it's not really treated, it can result into another big disorder, alcohol and drug use, which is what comes with substance use, and fear. Mental health disorders. These are the 3 that I'm going to stick closely to. This is going to be the focus of my presentation today. Major depression, bipolar, and schizophrenia. All of this is based on a mental health triad. And I know you probably say, well, what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to show you in a few. So, all of this is connected with similar signs and symptoms, starting with major depressive disorder. And I'm going to label that with the acronym of MDD, leading to bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. A lot of the episodes when it comes to bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 are very similar when it comes to the manic state and the hypomanic state. And we're going to talk about that in depth later on too as well. Major depressive disorder, that's MDD. It is a mental health condition that accompanies feelings of sadness, hopelessness, frustration that impacts daily living for at least 2 weeks or longer. According to the DSM-5, is anybody familiar with the DSM-5? Yeah. The DSM-5 is how we pretty much diagnose mental health conditions. Okay, so in the DSM-5, 5 or more of the following symptoms has to be present during the same 2 periods. At least one of the symptoms must be depressed mood or loss of interest in pleasurable activities that we enjoy. Symptoms can cause significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of daily function. There are 6 severity codes listed in the DSM-5 to categorize the episode. In this, we have mild, moderate, severe, psychotic features, partial remission, full remission, and unspecified. So when we're diagnosing now, it's different from the DSM-4. We didn't have specifiers to specify what actually or category that you fit. Now the DSM-5 said, you know what, let me go simplify this a little bit deeper. So now we have categories to put patients, because some patients when you're diagnosed, they really don't meet the whole criteria of MDD, but they meet like 2 to 3 of the symptoms, so that means it's unspecified. Because you don't really fit, but you have symptoms of it. So you don't really fit in this closed-in box, so that's what unspecified means. And full remission and partial remission is depending on the duration of how long the symptoms actually last. And that's how we get to that. With severe, if your symptoms are prolonged or 2 weeks or longer, we consider that a severe aspect. And the mild and moderate, so on and so on. The symptoms of MDD. Depressed mood, most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated or reported, by feelings of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness. You have a diminished interest in pleasurable activities. There is significant weight loss when you're not trying to diet or weight gain. Insomnia or hyperinsomnia, meaning that you don't sleep at all or you sleep too much, nearly every day. Some of these individuals, they're very agitated. Even a look could set someone off because they're that agitated. Fatigue or loss of energy every day. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt. Diminished ability to think or concentrate, so you're kind of confused. Sometimes you have spaced thoughts or racing thoughts, unable to formulate a complete thought. And recurrent thoughts of death. Not just the fear of dying, but fear of taking yourself out. And these individuals, they have actually a plan. They might not have the action, but they do have an identified plan. Bipolar 1 and 2. Oh, do I like that as well? So these symptoms, it's hard really to detect the difference, but there are differences, okay? So in bipolar 1, it's unusual shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, and the ability to carry out day-to-day tasks. With that being said, individual must meet criteria for manic episode. The manic is goal-directed activity, and manic episode, and depressive episode. So let me tell you the distinction why I put them on the slides again. In order to be diagnosed with bipolar 1, you have to have a manic episode, okay? Have to have a manic episode, and it has to last at least 1 week. In order to be diagnosed with bipolar 2, you cannot have a manic episode, because with manic episode, usually it comes with psychotic features. And that is not a form to categorize hypomanic episode. And we're going to get to the breakdown of manic episodes, the symptoms, and hypomanic episodes and the symptoms as well. So coming into the symptoms, the mood disturbance are present, and this is for manic. The mood disturbance are present and represent a change from usual behavior. And individuals have to meet at least 3 of the following symptoms. Inflated self-esteem, grandiosity, decreased need for sleep, more talkative than usual, flight of ideas, thoughts are racing, distractibility, increase in goal-directed activities, excessive involvement in activities that have potential for painful consequences. And I'm talking about people who make foolish business deals with people or investments, and folks who go on abnormal shopping sprees just because. The mood disturbance is severe, caused by marked impairment in social and occupational functioning that require hospitalization. A lot of people with bipolar 1, they will require hospitalization because with that, like I said before earlier, psych features come into play. And when psych features come into play, that usually happen with either hallucinations or delusions. Okay, people are unable to attend work. People, the family milieu, that are unable to adapt accordingly. The episode is not attributed to physiological effects of substance abuse. So that means that no one is substance induced or they're not acting out because they are under the influence of a substance, okay, or alcohol. Hypomanic episode. This is the period where elevated and irritable mood, increased activity lasts at least 4 consecutive days and present most of the day or nearly all of the day. During the period, very similar to manic, the mood disturbance and increased activity of energy, 3 of the more symptoms must be met. So going back to slide 9, the same symptomology for a manic episode and hypomanic. But however, the difference is it's at least 4 consecutive days. With the manic episode, it's at least 1 week. The episode is unequivocal change in functioning, and what I mean by that, going from mood swing shifting from highs and lows again, and functioning that is uncharacteristic of individual who is not symptomatic. So they're not showing the full symptoms of a manic episode, but they meet the criteria for the 4 consecutive for hypomanic. The disturbance of mood change is observable by others. So your family members, your boss, your co-workers may see some significant changes or impairment at your place of work or even in your social functioning. The episode is not attributed to the physiological effects of a substance. Once again, they're not coming in substance-induced. They're not under the influence of substance use. Major depressive episode. This is very similar to major depression, which we discussed earlier. So how many people remember? Just to give a recap. Yes.
Mood disorder.
Mood, okay, it's sort of with mood, but what else with the major depressive episode?
Anxiety.
Anxiety?
Yeah. Let's see.
Scattered thoughts, okay. Anything else? When we think about depression, what are some of the symptoms that we discussed earlier?
Long-term
Insomnia. Weight changes.
Long-term sadness.
Long-term sadness, absolutely. Anybody else remember anything else?
Mood swings.
Mood swings? Lack of interest in pleasure activities? Absolutely. So this is
Lack of sleep.
lack of sleep, yes. Isolation over there? I heard it back there. All right. I got you. All right. So these are some of the symptoms. So it's very much similar. The only thing that I'm going to pick out of here is that the significant weight loss, we're not guiding a weight gain, 5% of the body weight in a month. So 5% of your body weight in a month. All right? And of course, it decreases or increases appetite nearly every day. Another quick thing is that the recurrent thoughts of death, suicidal ideation without a plan, suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide is in this major depressive episode. What distinguishes between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2? What's the difference? How do we distinguish that?
The time.
The time and duration, okay. And what else? Manic episode where? Y'all get there. Y'all can really listen. I got it.
For 2, you cannot have a manic episode.
Yes, absolutely. You really listening. All right. What's your name?
Emily.
Emily. Okay, I got it. Yes, I got something for you. I got something for you. She's really remembering this information. All right, anybody else? All right, thank you. That's right. Syphilis. So what do we know about schizophrenia? What do you guys know about schizophrenia? Okay. Paranoia. Hallucination. Paranoia. What else? Anybody else can think of anything else? I think y'all almost caught it all, I believe. Hear voices. All right, so that's some of the hallucinations. Yes, sometimes you do have them a little bit. You know. Okay. Delusions. You are? Okay. All right, so you could be partnering with me to help me out with this, right?
I'm gonna try.
You gonna try? All right, now I'm gonna hold you to that. All right, guys. So schizophrenia, a mental disorder that is chronic and affects how a person behaves, thinks, and feels. Person with this disorder has lost through with reality, and it should be there. I'm sorry for the typo order, guys. Sorry about that. With reality and symptoms are disabling. Symptoms of schizophrenia can be present at the age of 16. In rare cases, children may have the symptoms. Now, do we diagnose the children with schizophrenia?
It seemed real, but it was real. You know, because they thought I was crazy, but I wasn't crazy. But it wasn't in my mind. It's an environment what I was living in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for sharing that. I
Okay.
appreciate that. Yes, sir.
I want to know, does the AANA meet help only on drug disorders Or is it you'll need it for the rest of your life to go to NA?
You know, you brought up a good question. You're going so far ahead of me. But yeah, you did bring up a good question. We do have NA meetings and AA meetings. And besides that, we have self-help groups for every single condition, to be honest with you.
That's what you
For every single condition. There's Gambling Anonymous, there's Alcohol Anonymous, Narcotic Anonymous, Sexual Anonymous. We have for every single thing. And I'm going to show you the listing. And actually, I have some copies for you guys to take home as well. So there's informative view with the 12-step meetings and what they are and where they are. Okay? All right. So with the criteria for schizophrenia, 2 or more of the following must be present for a significant amount of time. During a 1-month period, at least one of these must be in categories 1, 2, and 3. And what I mean by that, delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech. And when we're talking about disorganized speech, we're looking at incoherence, frequent derailment, which means you're saying a lot of stuff, but it's not making sense. Okay, so you're just gibbering and jiving. I'm trying to connect with you, but you're just really not making sense, and truly, you really don't understand what you said. Exactly. All right? So in this disorganized or catatonic behavior, and what I mean by catatonic, you're being in kind of like the stupor. You're easily confused. You don't have general understanding of certain things. Negative symptoms, diminished emotional expression. I might say something that's truly sad, and you might not even respond to it. You may start talking about something else, so you're not in tune with your emotional expression as well. Level of functioning, one of the major areas. It really impacts people at work, interpersonal relationships, or self-care is below the level. Because a lot of people, we're not taking care of ourselves. Okay? Now, in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, a sign of the disturbance persists for at least 6 months. So now in the DSM-5, it's called a spectrum. So we just don't go off and just label you as schizophrenia right away. Okay? It's steps for this. So first we start you off with brief psychotic disorder, and that's only provisional. And that's where we're beginning to see some type of signs that you may have of schizophrenia. But it has to persist beyond. So once it goes past the 2 weeks, it would say, okay, this is kind of ongoing, it's persisting. We lead up into schizotypical, or schizoaffective, disorder. And once we see that, we say, okay, well, this is beyond a 30-day period, and you're still experiencing the symptoms. Then we move you up to schizophrenia, okay? And that's pretty much how it works. So in this disturbance for the, welcome, you're fine. Disturbance is not attributed to physiological effects of substance use or medical condition. And with children, if a history of autism spectrum or communication disorder, schizophrenia is made only if delusions or hallucinations are present. So sometimes if we're not cautious, we can misdiagnose for something else. And we have to be really cautious when we do that. Okay? So if you don't mind, I want to show you guys a clip of a person. And I don't know if you guys familiar with TED Talk? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes? All right, so I just want to show a little clip for a minute. And it's from Ellen Sachs, JD, and she discusses her life with schizophrenia. Okay, so hold on one minute. Sorry about that. You guys hear? Can you guys hear that now?
Just a little bit.
Can you guys hear up there or no? No. No, you can't? No.
You keep talking, go ahead.
All right, so with Ellen Sachs, and I'm going to just present to you I'm sorry it didn't actually show. Ellen Sachs is actually a lawyer, and she was suffering from schizophrenia, and she didn't realize it until her moments of law school. At that time, she struggled. She was hearing voices really severely. She thought that demons was following her. Demons was around her. She would talk to her friends with some type of loose associations, and she couldn't really get and formalize her thoughts. With that being said, her roommates thought she was totally crazy. They pretty much left her outside, walking and talking to herself. And she was recalling different types of events of how she felt. She felt that she was worthless. She felt that, nobody cared about her, until she recognized that it got so severe it impacted her educational pursuits. She couldn't complete it. Sought help. She went to a psychiatrist who diagnosed her with schizophrenia. After within the first couple of weeks, she was hospitalized because it got so severe. She was not a firm believer of medication, so she refused to take it at first initially. When she began to take the medication, she realized that some of the symptoms actually subsided. She was able to go back to the same environment, get her work, but then she realized, she said, okay, I'm feeling better. So guess what she did? She told her psychiatrist, can you titrate me down, take me down off of the medication? Big mistake. Went back into school, had the same symptoms, but guess what? They were more intense. She couldn't go to school. She couldn't get herself together. Ended up being so severe that she was hospitalized for her very first time. She talked about her hospitalization for the very first time. She said they threw her down on the bed. They thought she was crazy. They put her in mechanical restraints. She felt like she was losing her mind. She felt like she was a criminal, and she needed help. And it didn't suit her. So she said going through this process, she related to one of her consults, who was a doctor as well, and said, hey, why are they treating me this way? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't even have threats of hurting or harming anyone. Why are they treating me this way? She really couldn't understand significance. So that tells you how mental health needs to be forever evolving. We need to find better ways in order to treat this population. That is not the appropriate way to do that. And that's something that we're working on. We're working with legislation, because believe it or not, we have a lot of these individuals in the wrong places. And what I mean by that, institutionalized in jail. Because we don't have a place to put them, or people don't take enough time to properly diagnose the condition. So they take them just to get them off the street, the individual off the street, say, okay, well, we saved this crew over here. So if we put them over there, we know that they last about 30 to 90 days. We're not giving them any medication. So guess what? When they reintegrate back into society, what happens? They do the same thing again. And it comes back, correct? So Ellen had put this mental health awareness campaign, and pretty much she has gotten involved into mental health capacity. So although she's a lawyer, she's an advocate, because she's been suffering and still suffering. And guess what? She's still taking her meds. And after everybody said she'll never make it, she did. She is a lawyer, a prominent one, and she's advocating for her population. So that was the moral of her story. But you guys, it's better if she would explain it, but sorry about that. Okay, so co-occurring disorder. Anybody familiar with co-occurring disorders? Co-occurring disorders is when you, yes?
Occurring with something else.
Okay, something else. And in the back, did you have something?
I was going to say a lot of co-occurring disorders could be substance abuse and mental health.
Absolutely. So when you have two ongoing, working the same, dysnosis. So you have a mental health condition and you have a substance use condition. Individuals receive dual treatment to address mental health and substance use. So that's where I come in, okay? So with substance use, this is the population that I really thoroughly enjoy to treat. Because guess what? You can't work on one without the other. You have to work aggressively on both, okay? So typically, yes?
With it being a dual,
Uh-huh.
how they get into the substance abuse is trying to deal with the mental.
Yes, that's
And
right.
so now they, instead of dealing with one issue, now they have two issues.
Multiple,
So
yes.
now have to be addressed both. Okay.
Absolutely. And to even go a little bit further, what you said about is trying to compensate for the mental health, a lot of this deal with self-medication. We self-medicate because we have an undiagnosed mental health condition that we didn't get treated for. So self-medicating, it makes us feel better. And so that's why we do it, okay?
Or try to.
Or try to do it. Yes, ma'am.
And I was gonna say, there's also dual diagnosis counselors
Yes, there are.
and therapists.
And there are also, guess what? Self-help meetings. It's called Double Trouble Recovery. Double Trouble Recovery. And it works with individuals who have co-occurring and mental health. So Double Trouble Recovery. And it's some around here, far few in between, but they are here. So diagnosis. People ask, how are people diagnosed? Okay. Mental health disorders are diagnosed by licensed professionals. Professionals incorporate testing and numerous assessment and screening tools to appropriately diagnose. Professionals also involve the family in treatment to capture a better sense of life-changing events experienced with their loved one. If medication is provided, the psychiatrist will discuss adverse reactions and the purpose of medication. An individual must follow up with their licensed provider to ensure optimal level of care is provided. This is a sticky thing. Working in substance use and knowing that a person has a mental health condition, it brings an extra flavor to the mix, okay? And what I mean by that, we are in constant contact with other paraprofessionals, your psychiatrist, your individual therapist, to make sure we are all on the same page of treatment. Your psychiatrist can't be treating you for one thing and then not treat you for the other. And we can't be treating you for one thing and not follow the recommendations of your psychiatrist. So we're all talking. It's called a wraparound service. So usually when individuals are diagnosed with both, you will have the wraparound service.
That way they won't fall into the cracks.
Exactly, and that way they won't manipulate as well. Because sometimes you have people who are on psychiatric medication or psychotropics, and they're still using. And if we know about it, what do we know about the effects of using psychotropic medication and using a substance? What happens? They don't mix. Hallucinate, absolutely, yes.
Are you talking about over-the-counter medicine?
Not over-the-counter medication, but some of it can have an impact. But I'm talking about illicit substances, so getting into the heroin, the opiates, okay, cocaine. Yes, ma'am.
So it makes the medication ineffective.
It makes the medication ineffective. So it's a counterproductive. Huh?
You can die from it.
Absolutely. You sure can. Mixing class of medication, you can. And let me get you an example. A person who's coming in who's suffering from alcoholism. They decide to get benzodiazepines. You guys remember benzodiazepines? Xanax, Klonopins, Librium, Ativan. Okay? And some more others too as well. But they're taking or drinking alcohol, and on top of it, they're taking the benzos. And with those combinations mixed together, what happens?
Does it take you to a deeper depression?
It can take you to a deeper depression, but what else happens medically that's very fatal?
It can be fatal.
It is fatal. So you immediately go into upper respiratory distress.
But especially, I guess, with depression and alcohol is down. So if you're depressed, which you're already down, which they're medicated to be better, is actually bringing them further down.
And so the benzodiazepine is a sedative.
Okay.
Okay? Alcohol is considered to be a depressant. When those two mix together, you do not severely. Because your body is trying to make up which medication to feed. Okay? And it's not. It's not. So with that being said, a lot of the times people, when they take that, they're over-medicated. Okay? And over-medication can lead to overdose. The number one overdose right now in the U.S. is what? Heroin. And then you have the benzodiazepine that's coming closely behind it. All right?
And actually it's coming back.
Yes, it is. You find more and more folks purchasing them off the streets. I'm talking about adolescents as well as adults. I've seen a lot of adolescents overdose since working with Adventist Behavioral Health Care in Montgomery County. It is definitely an epidemic. They are purchasing it from friends. They're sneaking in cabinets and taking them. So you have to be really careful and monitor that. I had one, and I'm just going to share this story briefly. A client that came in, no problem with substance use at all. But since the loss of the person's grandmother, they become really sad. She raised them. Of course, she had tramadol. Never thought about taking tramadol. Then the asked him, well, the dog got sick. So the dog was prescribed tramadol for pain. So the patient started taking tramadol. And that tramadol turns into once or twice a week to 2 to 3 times a day. Until this person couldn't function at work or at home. Almost lost everything. Almost hit rock bottom. Until his wife gave an ultimatum. Either you get treatment or this is over. And he woke up. Some people, it can go to that extreme to get help, but for others, it doesn't work. I have a couple of individuals who had OD twice and are living today, but still use because they don't believe it can happen to them. So you have to be really cautious. It's something that we have to treat, and if you see someone in need, we have to be able to help. And this is why this is so important. With awareness, yes.
And as loved ones, it's difficult because their behavior it really kind of clashes because you don't understand and you don't know if they're okay or they're not okay. So you can have to see where, as in family members coming in with the treatment.
Right,
The
absolutely.
support.
But you know what's so tricky about that? Family members are geared to getting the treatment that they need, but family members can be the biggest enablers also.
So again,
They just crazy.
You know, you said that just right. They can be the biggest enablers also. So they pretty much, they acknowledge and recognize the behavior, but they keep feeding the behavior. Yes,
I was gonna say, I work in a federal reentry center,
sure.
and we do have inmates currently who work on mental health disorders.
Yes.
They have no diagnosis and also the substance abuse. So we have to send them out for treatment. And the majority of the individual in my caseload, the inmates, suffer from mental health. And so the biggest issue that I have concerning that is that when they go out into the community-based program, they're not treated properly. And I say that because they're not getting the wraparound service. They do get the groups, but I have to fight with them to see the psychiatrist. And then when they do see the psychiatrist, they tend to tell the psychiatrist what they want to do. And so they're not being medicated, so they come back and they self-medicate themselves. So what ends up happening is their mental health exacerbates, and I have to recommend program removal, which is very difficult for me because I know that if they got the correct treatment, that they can function to society, and that's the ultimate goal. And so that's the issue I have with working with inmates who suffer from co-parent.
That is good. I have a quick question. You guys have, prior to this position out of the criminal system, you guys do transitional living?
We do.
You do.
Yeah.
With the traditional living, are they set up in a house that focus on both? And what I mean by this, like sober living
I
homes?
get it. So for example, my goal and my job is to help them secure housing, not so
Okay.
much as transitional housing. The transitional housing component comes from the USBO loans.
Okay.
They then have to put them in transitional housing if they don't have a release plan. The transitional housing they put them in does not offer treatment. I do know that for a fact. It's just like us homeless shelters. So once again, they're not being productive in society. You know, they're going to end up back in the institution again. So it's like a disconnect somewhere. And they can't go, a lot of them request to go to the practitioner that they were seeing before they got into the institution, but we can't allow that. They have to go to where BOP, Bureau of Prison, mandate them to go so they can be monitored. Because if they were to go to their own practitioner, they have to go through the whole rigmarole about the consent and release of information, and they don't want to go through that. So they have to go where BOP sends them. And where they are sending them, they're not getting the proper help. And so that's a big issue.
This is going to be a forever ongoing issue until we make institutions, it says for that, for jails and criminal institutions, utilize best practice when it comes to removing a person from a contained or controlled environment and reintegrating them back into the community. We need to have a step-down procedure to prevent recidivism, and we don't. And if it's not taken, or if they're not being able to go to these places, you're going to see them back as readmission. Unfortunately. And that's so sad, and that's the piece that we're missing. And that's something that as advocates that we're fighting for. Because we realize that we have majority of the population in our prison system, a lot of them have mental health diagnoses. And a lot of them weren't properly treated medically. before going in. And that's something that we really need to work on. And I'm trying my best to work with that because I have fellow colleagues at CSOSA, so I work with them on it. But it's an ongoing conversation. We oftentimes butt heads about it because it's a set way, which is fine. But I just want people to be open about it, because when you actually do a QA analysis on what the recidivism rate and re-entry to your program, all the money that we're spending for getting them back into service, we could be putting that to help them. And they're not capturing that piece because they're looking at the output. They're looking at the short term and not the long term. And that's where we need to focus on the long term. Yes?
This is just for the group, because I know a lot of people suffer from this when you talk about loved ones. Because of their adults, it's very hard to get them to take medicine. It's hard for them to, see the psychiatrist. It's very difficult when they're adults. So a lot of people get frustrated. So is there any advice you can give all of us about how to have a loved one, or how to make them do something?
It's not about making. And I strongly dislike saying self-love. But strongly encourage. Look, strongly encourage. And sometimes people, you keep hearing it so much, and they hear it. Sometimes there has to be some visual to go with it. Provide some education, first of all. Give them some material so they can read for themselves about what's going on. Because I can say it until I'm blue in the face, but until they have a general understanding of what it is, they're not going to believe it.
It's almost like a
Absolutely.
self-check.
It is, and it's a self-inventory. And they will begin to do that. Constantly getting them hooked up with the therapist, if they will, and with a psychiatrist, and actually having them to trust you for the sign of release. So you can take part into their treatment. Let me tell you something. When I come in, when I do intakes, the initial thing that happens is that I do a family assessment on the first day of intake. You know why I do a family assessment? Because I want to see how many supports you actually have that can assist you in your recovery. Because if you don't have the support, especially for family, that means I have a lot of work to do on the forefront of trying to get you connected. Because let me tell you something. For us as practitioners, discharge begins at intake. Discharge begins at intake. So we need to make sure that we set you up with every possible service to help you before leaving.
Yeah.
And we try to bring your family
That's
into
what's
it.
missing. The requirement to go as you going out.
Yes.
Is missing.
That is. And it's called aftercare. That's me. Not having a proper aftercare plan. But getting back to what you said, family, being engaged, being supportive, not being offensive, not getting on the defense. If a person messes up, don't lower their self-esteem even more, because guess what? We know we mess up, but we don't need you to beat us up about it. We need you to help us and be there for us. Attend some of the meetings with your family members. Show them that you care. A lot of times we're telling them to go to these places, but we're not going with them. Oh, you need to go to an AA meeting, or you need to go to a Gamma Psi meeting, or you need to go to Double Trouble Treatment Recovery meeting. Okay, well, attend with me.
Instead of them walking alongside.
Walk along, exactly. And then for parents and family members and loved ones, in order for you to be healed, they have Al-Anon meetings for you guys. So you can get some information and education about what your family member or loved one is going through.
Right.
'Cause
That's
you-
what's missing too. The family don't understand the disorder you're going through. To them, you're normally acting up.
Yeah.
But if they had a better understanding of what you're going through, they will help you differently.
Gotcha. And that is so true.
They
So
don't-
getting involved with
They
that.
don't be teach that though.
Huh?
They don't be teach that.
Yes.
Family don't be teach.
NAMI teaches families. Let me just put that in.
It's family.
The NAMI Family Education Program helps both the family as well as the individual who's living with the mental illness to better understand in order to better support the loved one with the condition.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That's right. And that comes into the family care.
I'm just
component.
representing.
I know. That's all right. I see you back there. Look. That's right. Yes.
I guess, and also with it, it's like the cost effective of treatment. That is a big thing. It's like, who's gonna cover this cost? We
Right.
need to get the help that I need.
Insurance companies, I fight with them every single day on the phone with trying to get it paid.
But
That's
is
another
it
thing.
changing since we're having so many, shootings, mass shootings, mental illness, you know, is it finally, it's like, you know, they say it gotta get so bad before.
Honestly, I can speak that we're still in the same space with insurance companies. Because unfortunately, they're about getting the money up front. But I can tell you, with different services, we do have grants and scholarships to help individuals who are going through mental health distress, and we can still help them. Okay?
It's
Yes.
your environment you got to know. I mean, you can't say that you won't get help because it's an environment. The environment, you want to get help, but it's an environment. You got to go out of town to get help.
Okay.
You know, because where I live, I couldn't get no help because everything was, was just the liquor and the beer and all that. It's just what they with me, and that's why I got away from the environment.
Good. And you have to be removed from the environment. That's what we actually practice.
Yeah.
If we're still going to have episodes of relapses, we have to go from the environment. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, one quick thing, guys, before, this is summing up for you guys. We have hotlines and self-help groups. And if you have a family member, co-worker, or someone that you are concerned about their well-being, reach out and be of service. There are many hotlines. We have suicide prevention hotline. We have a SHAMSA who actually helps with finding substance abuse placements hotline. I put here the Chesapeake and Potomac Region of NA meeting list. And then I had the Rockville Metro Club list where they serve Gambling Anonymous, Double Trouble Recovery. You also have Smart Recovery that works with individuals who are not yet on the spiritual base yet, but they still need the help. So Smart Recovery is an open facilitation meeting, but not so fixated on the spiritual piece. And I refer patients there as well. All right? Thank you guys for listening. Any questions or comments? I know we really slim short. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just real quick.
Yes.
I want to just for you to talk about the Adventist program, different from you going, anybody in any PG County hospitals? Okay, good, so I won't get sued. I'm like Southern Maryland Hospital, or the other hospitals that, I don't like to say behavioral health boards.
Right.
Can you explain the difference real quick? Because, they put you in there and keep you 3 days, medicate you, and kick you out.
All right, the hospital is a different thing, and that's what they do. They stabilize you. So when going to a hospital, the only thing they're doing is stabilizing the condition, giving them medication, make sure you find, and they have you on your way. We shouldn't do that, but we do.
They send them back in the community.
They send them back in the community without
referral.
Absolutely, well, they do a semi-referral. And it usually say, follow up with your PCP. We know that's not a legitimate referral. But typically that's what happens. But for those who are going into Adventist behavioral health care, that is actually an inpatient psychiatric unit. And that's a little bit different. And it goes 7 to 10 days. However, you have an aftercare plan, so they refer you to the outpatient wellness clinic. They can refer you to my program. We have a partial hospitalization program. So we have different levels of care that we can address the condition, and it's ongoing. So we have the wraparound service. So that's the difference.
What do you mean by partial?
Partial hospitalization program.
Yes.
So these are the people who, say for instance, they come from the inpatient unit and they're still suffering from mental health distress, but it's not to the point where they need to be hospitalized, but they need appropriate aftercare. These individuals, they go, and this is a 2-week program. And I don't want to take over Lauren's thing, because she's going to present that to you too. So, and they can go there to have still monitor the symptoms, for an appropriate aftercare and phase them out. Either back to individual therapy, other outpatient providers, or even if they need to step down to us, they can step down to substance abuse too, after partial hospitalization. Okay?
I actually have information on those programs at this table. So all the programs that are at the Rockville campus are located on this table.
You guys, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
I'd like to say, can you give a round of applause again for Miss Landon right there, Dr. Landon? Marvelous.
Next time we're going to have a red carpet.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And some speakers. Play your video. Okay. So now we're going to go into our next presenter. We have a wonderful pleasure of honoring our next guest speaker, which is the Honorable Judge Eugene Wolf, which serves for District Courts of Maryland for Montgomery County. Judge Wolf is the District Administrative Judge for the 6th District Court in Montgomery County, Maryland. He has served as a judge on the court since June 6, 2001, and as an Administrative Judge for the 6th District Court since January 1st, 2006.
Show you how you navigate your way through this process. The first thing I like to say is in Montgomery County, we currently do not have a mental health court. However, a petition has been filed by the court, and we expect to have a mental health court in Montgomery County before the end of this year. Not only in the district court, but also in the circuit court. Now, why is that significant? It's significant because you just heard some information about how individuals, because they lack services, they're institutionalized. They're placed in our jails and haven't been in the criminal justice area for 30 plus years, almost 40 years. Individuals that I've represented as an attorney are still appearing before me as a judge. And a number of these individuals are experiencing the same types of issues that we're talking about here, and primarily because we don't have the services that they need in order to get them out of the system. Prince George's County has a mental health court in the district court. They have one in Baltimore City, Harford County, and some of the other counties. The mental health courts are a specialty court. In order to participate in mental health court, however, you must be involved in the criminal justice system. You have to be charged with a crime. Now, it can be a minor crime, it can be any crime, any crime at all that can qualify you for the mental health court. So the bottom line is that if you have somebody who's experiencing mental health issues, in order to get them into that court, they must be charged. If they're not charged, they cannot participate in mental health court. When they come into the court, a referral can be made by anyone who may be an interested party. What I mean by that is it can be a family member, it can be somebody who is involved in the social service worker, or somebody who treated the individual. It can be a police officer, it can be a state's attorney, it can be the person's attorney. Anybody can recommend that individual for mental health court. Once that person is recommended, the person will then be screened by a team of mental health professionals, as well as the person's attorney and the prosecution. The prosecutor and the judge have veto powers as to whether or not somebody comes into the court. Why is that important? It's important because what we're trying to do in this case is make sure that a person is not too much of a danger based on the nature of the offense, so that we can have some success with them to make sure that they make it through this process. A mental health court usually lasts for about a maximum of 18 months. So that person can participate in that court. The difference between an individual being in mental health court and being in some other process, or if you're familiar with anyone who's ever been involved in the criminal justice system, and they're placed on probation. One of the real problems with probation, especially if you're not in a specialty court, such as a mental health court, is that the response time for when somebody offends, i.e. somebody, let's say you have somebody that you've ordered to take medication or to go see their psychiatrist or psychologist, on regular probation, the response time for me to get that person back into court in order to address that issue, significant periods of time passes. And it's because the individuals who are supervising, the caseload is so great, and by the time they file whatever they need to file with the court, we act on it, we then serve the person, get them back into court. we can talk about possibly 1 or 2 months passing. That is much too long of a period of time in order for us to respond and be helpful to assist that individual. The other thing that happens is when a person is placed on probation, and even if we make every attempt in the world to try to get individuals with mental health services or drug assistance, drug abuse services, the problem is that the way that the system is set up is we do not do a treatment plan as they perhaps would if you're sending to your group. They are simply put on probation, and a person is then, they have a caseload, and they do all of the general things. No plan is set up. You do these things or else. And if you violate, then they bring you back and we didn't try something else. In a mental health court, what happens is, once you're accepted into that program, you're going to get all of the wraparound services. And an individual is going to monitor you, and they're going to monitor that person and make sure that if there's an issue, there's an immediate response. The court is set up so we can see individuals on a 1 or 2 week period. So the response time is quick for the court system. That means that if somebody violates, the individuals who are working with them also have the ability and the authority to immediately intervene and do certain things that may not be, it's going to be some type of intervention in order to make the person get back on track as to what they're doing. For example, if the person isn't seeing their psychiatrist, if the person doesn't take their medication, that supervisor is going to know that immediately because they see that person and have contact on a frequent basis, weekly or even greater. So when that person doesn't respond, they can immediately take an action on their own without having to come back to the court for us to do something. They're authorized to do that. And then if they need to get the person back into the court, they can simply arrange and we can have the person back in court within a matter of days. The type of response we need to have as opposed to waiting for months for anything to happen. Once the person is in the program, again, the whole idea is to work with the person so that when they leave that program, they have housing, they have a follow-up plan, they know where they're going to go, what they're going to do, everything is in place. Again, the problem, however, is even with the mental health court, the maximum period of time that we're going to probably work with somebody is going to be that 18-month period. After that 18-month period, then they're going to be placed back into the community, and hopefully, at that time, they're going to, if they've been successful in completing the program, hopefully they're going to follow up and follow through. We were talking about family members. All of those individuals, family members, everybody else will be involved in this process. So hopefully it will be successful after that time period. The statistics for individuals who have gone to the mental health court are very good. The numbers is substantially less than the number who recidivated when they don't receive these services. So we will have those courts in Montgomery County before the end of the year. The second thing I wanted to mention is, let me take another step back. Once we sign the order, the sheriff is immediately notified. The sheriff will then come to, they will go pick up the petition from the commissioner, and usually the commissioner is going to ask you to remain there until the sheriff arrives. The reason for that is the sheriff is going to get some information from you that goes beyond what's on this petition. And they're going to want to know, where's the person? Are there any weapons involved? You want to know all these other things that's going to assist them in serving this petition. And once they get that information, they're going to go, if you know where the person is, they're going to go immediately and pick the person up. They're going to take them to the nearest facility to be treated. When they take them to the facility, you need to understand that although we're signing this order, and and we find probable cause, this is a civil action. What does that mean? It means that when they take them to the facility, under the statute, they must be seen and evaluated within 6 hours of arrival. And hopefully something happens before then. But once they're taken there, if the person, the evaluee, determines that they don't want to stay, the facility's not going to keep them. They can walk out. It's a civil commitment. So therefore, there's nothing that we can do to make that person stay. We can order that they be taken, but we cannot order that they stay. Now, if for some reason the medical personnel determines that this person is a danger, they can ask the sheriff to stay, and they will stay, to safeguard all of the parties there. If the medical person does an evaluation and determines that this person is really a danger to himself or somebody else, once they do the evaluation, they can also recommend that we do an involuntary admission. And if we do an involuntary admission, then that's the difference. But it puts in play all kinds of other different things that we have to talk about that goes well beyond what we're doing here today. Involuntary admission means that this person now has the right to have an attorney. It means that they right to have a hearing and to determine whether or not they are in truth suffering from a mental disorder or disease, that they are a danger. That doesn't happen immediately, it would happen within 10 days. And so once those things happen, it really becomes much more adversarial. However, if once the person gets there and the comment was made about going with them, a family member or something, if you have any persuasion with the individual, and if you persuade the person to stay there, they can civilly commit the person, which means that they are voluntarily staying there, and the person can then do more than the 3 days if they want to keep it. But again, this is based on whether they have insurance and other things that goes beyond what the court can order. Once we order the emergency admission petition, if the person decides that they're not going to walk out, the maximum that they can be held is 3 days. So if you're looking for some long-term solution, it is not the emergency admission petition. That is to get them stabilized. So hopefully you can do something more than that after they're stabilized. That is the only process available in order to have those individuals picked up. What I get often is individuals coming in to tell me that somebody is they're out of control, and we have to then be able to decipher what that means. The person can be out of control, the person can be on substances, but if it's not related, you must make the finding that it is related to a mental disorder. So when you walk in and you testify and you offer evidence to that judge, you must make it relate. If you don't make it relate, we're not going to find probable cause. We're not going to have the person picked up. The other thing that I should mention is that when you find that the person is in need of assistance, you need to act on it then, because when we sign these orders expire after 5 days. Why is that important? It's important because the whole point of this is, and I'm not a clinician, but I have individuals appear before me every day, many of whom are picked up because maybe they're trespassing or doing something else, and once they get into the jail, someone, a clinician, interviews them, a psychologist sees them, and they make a determination this person needs to be seen further. Well, I'm seeing this person on the video for about 5 minutes, and usually an individual can hold themselves together for 5 minutes. So I can't make a determination within that 5 minutes, do they really need the assistance? So you're gonna have to bring them back and engage them for a little bit. And once you engage them, you then realize, there's an issue. And that's when you can order. What I was my point was that if you see something happens last week, and you come in on day number 10, you're not gonna get that order. All right? So you come in when it happens. Because if you don't come in when it's happening and you wait too long, then the presumption is that a person, that whatever that condition is, could have changed. We're not going to issue an order based on conduct that happened prior. And the other thing that I often get again is individuals coming in telling me somebody they've been using drugs for the last week or so, and they're doing some wild things. But that might be true, but again, is it based on a mental disorder? If you can make it late, then you make your order, otherwise you don't. In a nutshell, that's the emergency admission petition and the status of mental health court in Montgomery County. Any questions?
So I'm just wondering, I have a couple of questions, but in terms of you have to observe the conduct that suggests a mental disorder, and then you say it has to be threatening a danger.
You have to be, whatever that conduct is, you have to put the safety of that individual or others at risk.
Could that include, like, I'm just thinking of someone with mania and, like, spending, like, financial danger, which could result in, like, homelessness or engaging in risky relationships?
Yeah, what we're really talking about an individual who may subject another person to injury, that kind of thing. Personal, physical type injuries. And if you read the statute doesn't even talk about property. It talks about injury, and it talks about physical injury. So even if the person is walking around the house and, put their holes in walls, it's not going to hurt.
So I have a question. Is anything being done that when you get these emergency petitions, that they can do a better evaluation, that they stay longer than 3 days? I say that because I had a loved one, and I got several PPs, and not in the hospitals, but they were going to, discharge them. I convinced them that they needed to be longer, so they transferred them as well. If you can't help them anymore, they work there. Transfer them back to the VA. They go into the VA. They end up being there sometimes anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months. So had they let them out, they've been back to square one. And is it not true that however long they've been off their medications, that's how long they need to be back on medications to get back to a better state?
But that's what I'm new to the commission. What I can tell you is this. As long as I can recall, and this is going back, like I said, about 30 years plus, the maximum period of time we can issue an order for is 2 days.
Yeah, but I'm
72
asking,
hours.
so is anything being done to revise that?
No.
3 days does not, is
No,
not.
remember now, the goal is to restore that person, all right, get them back. So that's why I was saying to you, if you can convince your person to go to VA or something else, then convince that person, and then that person can elect on their own to do it.
No, I actually had a hospital transfer them
Yeah,
to the VA because they were, a couple of times they were near
that's my point, though. My point is this, the person voluntarily agreed to do it. Okay?
No, this time they did not. He honestly did not. He was near catatonic, wasn't responding, wasn't talking, whatever. And so I'm saying, look at him. Why would you send him back like
The
this?
only other way that person could have been kept is that they did an involuntary commitment. Okay? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So our order says take them there.
Yeah.
Once they're there, the law says you can hold them for up to 3 days.
That's why I'm asking, is there anything being,
No.
to revise that?
No.
Okay.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Yes.
I had a past client who was involuntarily put into a hospital unit. And I went to court because I saw her hit my superior, because I had lived in a nursing home at that time. And the judge ordered her mandatory medication because she wasn't stabilized. And then they decided
the part that you have to keep in mind. Yeah. This is the thing that you have to keep in mind. When we act, we're acting on the information that's coming from the clinicians and the family. I don't know of a judge yet who's going to be able to make that determination on their own, that the person should receive certain medication or anything else. Whatever that plan is, whatever that recommendation is coming from the individuals caring for us. So we're relying on them. If that person made the recommendation to the judge, I'm sure, relied on that. And then once they changed it, I'm sure that they're not going to do something that's going to be adverse to the person. But we're completely relying on what clinicians and other individuals think.
So many questions, but we get a lot of calls from family members who, they have loved ones who are resistant to get treatment and they want to take this step, and it's just that one piece where they're not threatening themselves or others. And you said that you had one case where it was trespassing, but they were going to come in. I mean, can you not necessarily spin it so that?
Well, okay. Let me clarify. Most of the offenses that we get individuals coming in who are experiencing some type of mental disorder disease, those individuals have been arrested.
Okay.
And if you ever come to court and sit in court one day, when we do our bond docket, you will find nothing against downtown Silver Spring. There are certain policies and practices that just lead to individuals being arrested and lead to them being arrested repeatedly. You probably are aware that there's a block right here. This block right here is owned by a private concern. And they have trespassed, i.e. you can't come onto this property, numerous individuals who typically like to go to the beer store and have a drink, and then they go over here. So all these individuals are rounded up and arrested, and they come in, and many of them may be veterans or other individuals who have some mental health issues. And when they come in, because of lack of resources, they're unable to make bonds. They see me the next day. And when they see me the next day, I have a psychologist who's seen them, or a clinician who's seen them. And they say to me, this person needs to be evaluated. I then take this case and reset it for another week for them to be evaluated, see a psychologist, whatever else. So those individuals are arrested, not family members. And they've been evaluated by a psychologist. And then they say to me, this person really needs to receive further treatment. In Montgomery County, I can't send them to Adventist or anyplace else. I'm limited to where I can send them. So I can send them either to Springfield Hospital Center, I can send them to Perkins if it's a serious offense. Those are my actions. And for anyone who isn't aware, there's a crisis on beds in Maryland. So there are no beds to get individuals in those facilities because they're used by all the counties in the state. So that individual may sit at the jail for a month before I can even get them into the facility. All right? So by the time I can get that person in there for a trespass, which carries 60 days, they've sat there like half the time. Now, at that point, and this is where mental health court comes in, at that point, what can I do with this individual? Because even the worst that I can do is give the person another 30 days in jail. What does that do? Nothing, because they're going to be back in his life. All right? So I now have to convince this person through the person's attorney or family member, you really need to go to mental health court. But if you don't, what's the consequence? 30 days. Okay. 30 days and why do I have to subject myself to 18 months? Okay? So they're going to make those type of determinations. So we don't have a system set up to immediately respond to people who are in need. And when we have that situation with a family member, they're competing against all these individuals that I'm getting off the streets. So I don't have the space to put them. And all I can do is order that they go, but I can't make them create a bid. So that's what Any other questions?
Yesterday, with my stepson, he's back to city for a day. And I know his father had dropped him off at the University of Maryland. And he was said he was gonna walk to the White House. I don't know, something transpired where Eda had got arrested, and it was something, I guess, dealing with, they picked him up because I guess he was acting or doing something. I didn't get the whole insight, they didn't share that with me. But, I know not too long later, his father was going to pick him up. And this was in the District of Columbia. I'm not sure how to follow up to find out. Well, I guess we need to sit down and talk to him to find out exactly what transpired. Because he just seemed to be in a very kind of upset, awful spirit last night when he had came and talked to me. He can't apologize to me. I'm like, he didn't do anything, you know. So it's just something that just transpired over 24 hours. Just kind of got me like, don't know.
The only comment I want to make with that is that typically, whenever anybody is involved in any matter, whether it's being picked up at that or anything else.
I think he was basically doing, I guess, a political statement.
Right, well, but my point is this, that you really need to fully examine all of the facts, because usually something is always a little bit missing. And when it's missing, you just have to get it all together. And once you do, you can then determine where you're going to go from there. I need if you, again, the commissioners are always, I'm sorry, the final thing I'm going to say is this. When you make, and this kind of follows up on what you just question you just asked. If a police officer observes conduct that they think may be based on some mental disorder or disease, they can take the person and take him directly to the facility. Okay? So you don't have to, as a family member, come down and say the person is involved in certain activity. But the police officer must observe the conduct. If they fail to observe the conduct, then they can't do anything. They're going to then put it back on the family. And if you didn't observe it, you can't do it. Okay, so that's why it's important that it's always observed.
I noticed in mental health court in the district, the number of consumers reoffend, and then it kind of lengthens that 18-month process. Is that something that Montgomery County, when
our process is going to be a total of 18 months.
Total of 18 months.
Right. But it doesn't mean that when you come in, that the maximum period of time for you could be 18 months. That's why when they sit down with you, the clinicians and everybody sits down with you up front, they're going to do a plan for you. And maybe for you, it might be 12 months. Okay? But it can go to 18. 18 is just the absolute max. And the reason for that is, when you look at the numbers of people who will need the services, the capacity just won't allow us to do that many people. So that's going to be the reason for the max 18 months. And hopefully we'll get people in and out. Right now we project that for the first year we're going to be able to do about 170 people, which is not a lot.
And then the other question, you talked about putting a plan together. How quickly will you all be able to help with some of the situational things and environmental things, such as their housing or lack of food or lack of income, in order to help them to sustain themselves so they don't reoffend and drag out that process?
That's going to be part of the initial planning process.
Right.
We're going to have people there. We're going to have social workers, people from housing, people from jobs. Everybody is going to be there to do a part of this referendum.
Okay.
Placement. We've had meetings with the county. We've had meetings with Health and Human Services or whatever it's called. All these individuals have committed to coming in and being a part of this planning team so we can map out where they're going. And once we map it out, again, we're going to do fine, except that at 18 months. So hopefully it'll work. Yes, ma'am.
You said you have to have probable cause for the judge to.
Yes.
Is the probable cause the same as having a diagnosis for that?
No. The probable cause is we have to believe that there is sufficient information that you've given to us that this conduct is based on a mental disorder.
Okay.
That's what probable cause is.
Okay.
And because we don't do, once we find that, then we sign the order, then they take them to the medical person. All right, thank you very much.